One of the things I'm looking forward to with Congress coming back into session is that maybe it will put an end to the trend of late in which the hottest stories in the media are about the media. Although I know I have done my part on this. The meta media stories that have dominated the news for the past week or two, mostly, I think, are more heat than light. That said, I do think it's been useful to have the overt acknowledgement we've had these last couple of weeks that in the 24-hour news cycle, and in cable news in particular, honestly, it's really political conflict that is most marketable, that drives viewership. One of my favorite political conflict stories of all time is the sharp, bitter, divisive, at times inhumanely polarizing political conflict between John McCain and John McCain. John McCain, for example, against the Bush tax cuts for the richest Americans. John McCain, on the other hand, totally for those very same tax cuts.
If you go back to 2004, I know your position on the Bush tax cuts did change, and you've talked about that before, but I do want to play something you said from an interview in 2004 and ask you about it.
I voted against the tax cuts because of the disproportionate amount that went to the wealthiest Americans. I would clearly support not extending those tax cuts in order to help address the deficit. But the middle income tax credits, the families, the child tax credits, the marriage tax credit, all those I would keep.
That's exactly what President Obama says.
So what does John McCain today have to say to John McCain 2004? He says, is there a statute of limitations? Seriously, that's what he said.
Is there a statute of limitations?
No. Even though John McCain 2004 was against tax cuts for the rich, John McCain now says this.
It is not the time to raise anyone's taxes.
Anyone's. John McCain is also diametrically opposed to John McCain on environmental legislation.
It's cap and trade, that there will be incentives for people to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It's a free market approach.
That's the John McCain who is in favor of cap and trade. But if President Obama is on board with that idea, John McCain finds that he is very much against cap and trade.
By the way, that's cap and tax. That's not cap and trade.
I can't even say the words. John McCain, who ran for president in 2008, also essentially admitted that he would vote against John McCain's own immigration proposal.
At this point, if your original proposal came to a vote in the Senate floor, would you vote for it?
It won't. It won't. That's why we went through the debate. No, I would not, because we know what the situation is today. The people want the border secured first.
John McCain is also against Jerry Falwell, among others, as well as being for Jerry Falwell. Here he is as the against Jerry Falwell model of John McCain.
Neither party should be defined by pandering to the outer reaches of American politics and the agents of intolerance, whether they be Louis Farrakhan or Al Sharpton on the left, or Pat Robertson or Jerry Falwell on the right.
That's the model of John McCain that is against Jerry Falwell. Jerry Falwell is an agent of intolerance. But keep in mind, there is a different model of John McCain who is totally for Jerry Falwell.
Do you believe that Jerry Falwell is still an agent of intolerance?
No, I don't. I think that Jerry Falwell can explain to you his views on this program when you have him on.
Every once in a while, a politician changes their mind. And there's nothing wrong with changing your mind. Normal humans do it in the normal course of human events all the time. Politicians do it too. They get new information, they recognize new political realities as ideas shift around in the country, but this has happened to John McCain on every single major policy issue that has come up during his time in the Senate, and he's been in the Senate for a really long time. There is not a major issue on which John McCain can be found now to have one identifiable position. Not a single one. John McCain's positions on every single major policy issue that he has faced since he has been in the Senate are now utterly incoherent. It is impossible to say what he believes unless you're only counting the current model. And that makes it all the more remarkable that John McCain is such a perceived font of wisdom for the punditocracy in Washington. What John McCain says he thinks about something at any one moment carries this great weight in the Beltway and gets written up and pontificated over, despite the fact that if you wait 5 minutes, John McCain is likely to have a totally new stance on the same issue, depending on who's asking and why. And that is the practical context for understanding John McCain's importance to repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. In Mr. McCain's 59th appearance on Meet the Press yesterday, 59, Senator McCain made clear his current stance on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which is that even though the Pentagon is completing its study of the effects of repealing the policy on unit cohesion and morale, Senator McCain now demands that there must be another study on unit cohesion and morale. I mean, honestly, to be fair, there are so many different John McCains to choose from on this issue, we should really start a few John McCains ago. Way back in 2006, John McCain told Chris Matthews it should be up to military leaders, that if and when the military decided it was time for Don't Ask, Don't Tell to be repealed, he would be on board with the military.
The day that the leadership of the military comes to me and says, Senator, we ought to change the policy, then I think we ought to consider seriously changing it, because those leaders in the military are the ones we give the responsibility to.
That was 2006. Then the leadership of the military did come to him and say it's time to change the policy.
It is my personal belief that allowing gays and lesbians to serve openly would be the right thing to do.
The president announced he will work with Congress this year to repeal the law known as Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I fully support the president's decision.
After that, the John McCain who wanted to hear from military leaders, wanted to defer to military leadership, that John McCain mysteriously disappeared. The new John McCain was very, very angry that the military leadership was talking about getting rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, because it meant that they weren't being properly deferential to Congress.
I'm deeply disappointed in your statement, Secretary Gates. Your statement, obvious, is one which is clearly biased, without the view of Congress being taken into consideration.
See, that John McCain says the military must defer to Congress. Also, there's a different John McCain that says that the Congress really must defer to the military. I bet those two John McCains hate each other. Overall, though, why does John McCain disagree with John McCain on how the decision to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell should be made? When the host of Meet the Press, David Gregory, asked that question on Meet the Press yesterday, he got the opinion of a whole new John McCain.
Why doesn't that meet your standard of 2006 for you to say, okay, it's time to change views?
Because, as I said back then, that we need to have a careful examination, and Admiral Mullen was, as quote, speaking personally. We are going to go through, hopefully, a year-long study that will hopefully also have the feelings of the men and women who are serving.
That was John McCain speaking in February. I stand corrected. John McCain there, February John McCain, thinks really that what we need to consider is not so much Congress or military leaders, but what the troops themselves think about repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Enter a study which surveyed members of the military about their feelings on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. The survey has reportedly found that 70% think the effect of repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell would be positive, mixed, or non-existent. So, what does John McCain think about repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell now that every single new condition he has placed his support on has been met?
Are you going to stand in the way of this ban being lifted?
I will stand that I want a thorough and complete study of the effect on morale and battle effectiveness of the United States military. I will listen, as I've said for years, to our military leaders, and not a study that is leaked, as we know this town's pretty good at that.
7 in 10 members of the military think it would be just fine to have it lifted.
You and I have not seen that study.
And even when that study comes out, he already knows he wants another study. John McCain is not the chair of any committee. John McCain does not have any major legislation to his credit from his entire career in the Senate, other than the McCain-Feingold campaign finance law, which he doesn't exactly support with a brass band anymore anyway. Senator John McCain's stances on legislation and important policy issues and principles are so fundamentally inconsistent as to render the phrase flip-flop meaningless. And yet John McCain is still viewed as a Washington oracle, as a guy you've got to win over. If you do fail to win him over, though, don't worry. A new John McCain might come along any minute now, and maybe you will have better luck with him.